It's Election Day on Monday. Whichever party forms government, it will have big issues to tackle here at home and, of course, abroad. One of the top foreign policy challenges facing Canada is China. Canadians Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor have been detained in that country for more than 1,000 days. China stands accused of committing a genocide against its minority Muslim population, the Uyghurs, as well as undermining Hong Kong's political autonomy and threatening Taiwan's independence. How does each party plan to tackle those challenges? Heather McPherson is an Alberta NDP candidate. She is in Edmonton. Michael Chong, an Ontario Conservative Party candidate, and he is in Fergus, Ontario. Rob Oliphant, an Ontario Liberal Party candidate who is in Toronto. And Mr. Oliphant, first question goes to you. Reporting from the Globe and Mail says Canada was not consulted about this new US, UK, Australia security pact, which is, of course, itself aimed at confronting China's growing military and political influence in that region. Why is Canada not part of this pact? Is it a snub?
Well, the first thing I would say is the Globe is wrong on that first point. Of course, Canada was informed about this before it happened, and we're in constant conversation with all of our allies and our partners on a range of issues. This particular issue is very specifically about nuclear-powered subs. That's what this is about. And Canada is not in the market for nuclear-powered subs right now. So to say we've not been included is simply not a fair statement on this situation. The reality is, the last I heard, and I've looked at our platform, I've looked at our agenda, and we're not in the market for nuclear-powered subs.
Let me jump in on you, because it isn't just about subs. It's about artificial intelligence, cyber capabilities, quantum technologies, additional undersea capabilities. And when you say Canada was informed, was Canada informed like the day before it was announced, or had the opportunity to be involved and chose not to?
Well, Canada is involved in every decision about national security with our Five Eyes partners. All of those issues are part of what the Five Eyes are about. So along with New Zealand and Australia, the UK and the United States, we share intelligence, we work together constantly, and we're constantly engaged in each other on all of those issues. This is a separate agreement primarily about subs, and we're not in that particular agreement at this time. I don't think the Conservatives would be if they were in the government either, because I've looked at their platform, and there's nothing in their platform about buying nuclear-powered subs, unless they change their mind again on that.
Okay, let me talk to the Conservatives here for a moment. Michael Chong. Mr. Chong, your party's promised a tough stance on China, banning Huawei from 5G, cracking down on Chinese foreign influence operations in Canada, moving trade and supply away, long list. Meanwhile, of course, we have the two Michaels who continue to be imprisoned in China. If you go ahead with what your platform says, how would that impact, how would it help get them out of prison?
Well, David, that's a great question. I think the starting point is that it's clear that the current Liberal government's approach to China isn't working. As you pointed out, Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spavor have now been wrongfully detained for over 1,000 days. Robert Schellenberg is on death row. Hussein Jalil's whereabouts is completely unknown. China is also presenting threats to our economy and to our citizens, our values. And so clearly, the current approach isn't working. China's also threatened other countries, though, like Australia, for example. And if we look what the Australians are doing, I think it's been a far more effective approach. They've taken a much stronger line against the threats that China is presenting. And we think that that is the model for Canada to follow, which is why we've put it into our platform. And I think increasingly under this current government, Canada is not seen as a reliable security partner. We've not been invited to join the quadrilateral security dialogue between India, Australia, Japan, and the United States. We were not included in yesterday's defense deal. And I think both of those things should alarm Canadians, because these are our traditional democratic allies.
Okay, so let me just pick up on you there and ask you about consequences. And this is deeply entangled. So if we go and take a harder stance, as you say the Australians have done, and you advocate that we should be doing that against China, they have shown their capability to push back. It's a great big bear in China, and they can attack our canola exports to that country, our pork exports to that country, our beef exports to that country, and have shown that they will be willing to do that. Meanwhile, they have, not just the two Michaels, but Mr. Schellenberg, who's also imprisoned in China. Where is the play there in terms of the consequences?
Absolutely. Australia is the model to look at. Australia, in fact, is far more exposed to China than Canada. In fact, China is to Australia what the United States is to Canada. Most of Australia's exports go to China. They're far more dependent on China than are we. They are in the Indo-Pacific region in a way that Canada is not. And yet Australia took a very firm line on China a number of years ago. And you're right to point out that China retaliated, but it hasn't worked. China, for example, banned some of the imports of Australia's natural resources. It hasn't worked. In fact, all it's done is driven up the price of those resources. And Australia is now getting top dollar for much of its natural resources on global markets because of China's distortions. And so we have to stand up for the principles that this country and other democratic allies are based on. And if we do, we'll find like-minded partners like the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia will join us at the table and ensure that we are not alone and isolated against these threats coming from China.
Okay, to Heather McPherson of the NDP. Your party's platform says, and I'm going to quote it here, we will work with our allies to lead a robust and coordinated international response to China's disregard of the rule of law. Now, that sounds an awful lot like what the Liberal government that preceded this election has been pursuing. How is your policy different, if it is different, from what the Liberals have been carrying out?
Well, thanks for the question. And I have to say, like, the problem I see that we have with Canada right now is, first of all, it's very incoherent. There's really very little, it's not very clear where the Liberal government is going with our relationship with China. We can see that it's not worked. It's not been very, very strong at all. But it's part of a bigger concern that I have. You know, we are seeing these alliances being made. We are seeing some of these microlateralist changes coming in the world order, and yet Canada's not at the table. Canada continues to be diminished from what we used to be in terms of the world order. We're not having these conversations. We're not being invited to be part of these coalitions. We're not being invited to participate. And, you know, when Mr. Oliphant speaks about it being about nuclear submarines, he knows very well that that's not accurate. This is actually about sharing information, sharing security details. All of those things are much more what this is about. This is not just a submarine deal. This is a clear indication that Canada and our role in the world, whether it be in international development, whether it be in foreign affairs, whether it be in foreign trade, is deeply diminished. And that the lack of coherency, the lack of comprehensibility that the Liberal government has shown has just put us in this position where you know, other countries don't even know where we stand, because very clearly the Liberal government doesn't know where we stand.
Okay, we've only got a short time left here, but I want to come back to Mr. Oliphant and talk about the approach of the Liberal government preceding this election, which appears to be, in some ways, don't poke the bear. And one example of that is Huawei. You promised to make a decision on Huawei and 5G before the 2019 election. Here we are, the next election. Why is it that a decision has not yet been made, Mr. Oliphant?
Well, with all due respect to both my colleagues, they know that the principal body for sharing intelligence is the Five Eyes. It's not this new association of three other countries. The way we work is multilaterally. That's why over 25 countries joined with us, with Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig at their hearings. We put together that table. That's why 70 countries have joined us on arbitrary detention. We're not alone. We have a coherent policy. We will challenge China. We have no problem challenging China on issues of human rights. We'll stand up about the Uyghurs. We'll stand up about Tibet. We'll stand up on Hong Kong, and we'll stand up for Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor.
And what about Huawei? What about Huawei?
Well, and we're going to learn to compete with them as well. We ask for a level playing field on all of those issues. The decision on Huawei will be made. It is a decision that is a complex decision. It will be done to make sure it's done in the best interest of Canadians and Canadian businesses. That's what we will do. We will take all the security information we need for that, and the decision will be made appropriately. But we're not alone. We stand with our allies and our like-minded countries on many of these issues. We issued joint statements with the United States, with the United Kingdom, with Australia on issues like Hong Kong. We are far from alone. We're at the table. We're negotiating, and we're building alliances and allegiances every day.
Okay, I'm going to have to go to Mr. Michael Chong on this just because we're running out of time here. Michael Chong, some of the things that your party has proposed are the various things that the Chinese government, essentially through the Global Times, which is a mouthpiece to the Communist Party, has said would invite counter strikes from China. Should Canadians be worried that if your policies are adopted, that we would face repercussions from the Chinese?
Not at all. Canadians should see our approach to China as one, taking us out of the isolation that we currently are in, isolated from allies, democratic allies like the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, India, and Japan, into a multilateral approach where we work more closely with these allies so that we are part of a defense pact that was announced yesterday between Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom, so that we are part of the quadrilateral security dialogue with Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. Our position is that currently the government's passive approach is essentially treating Canada like a piñata. Canada's a piñata that China is whacking to show the rest of the world what happens when you're passive and to make an example of us. But by standing up for ourselves, based on our fundamental principles in concert with our allies, like the Australians have done, will ensure that Canada is better protected against these threats and ensure at the same time that we stick true to the long-standing traditions of this country in standing up for democracy, freedom, and the rule of law.
Okay, I'm almost out of time here, so I want to ask one last question of Ms. McPherson, and it is about an official petition that was sponsored by the NDP's Nikki Ashton in the House of Commons just last year, calling on Ottawa to release Meng Wanzhou, who's connected to the two Michaels situation. Would an NDP government push for Ms. Meng's release?
You know, we need to make sure that we are following the rule of law. This is part of the justice system that all Canadians are proud of, that all Canadians should be respecting. So that is not something that politicians should be commenting on. That is something that is part of the justice system, and those channels have been started and they'll continue on that way.
All right, we'll have to leave it there with the three of you. Thank you very much, and have a good final weekend.
Thank you so much. Good luck, everyone.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.